Louisiana area and introducing the idea of shrimping, and then gumbo and jambalaya becoming what they are in New Orleans cooking. Like this, Filipino's been, for better or for worse, I guess that's, we're colonized as shit, but at the same time, we absorb so much, and it does diffuse out. And
it's alive.
Batteries, yeah, and these batteries are probably made in the Philippines too. Dante Bosco said it best. We're the black Asians. No, I'm kidding. That's double on that. Yeah, he was also faking the funk, so it's all good. No, but I think I take pride in the fact that a lot of up and down the West Coast, interaction with other people, other cultures, a lot of polyculturalism going on. And for folks that have lived and grew up on the West Coast, they know. You might not see Filipinos on TV or hear them on the radio, but if you grew up on the West Coast, and you know that Filipinos are cool motherfuckers, man. You just know. And so I think, I think it's those. But I don't say that to put down no one else. I think it's to say it, to own it, that we do have a colonized history, but in the spirit of hip hop, we take the scraps that we're given and we make something beautiful and survive on. Yeah, we've been something since way back then.
I don't really have anything to add, just like the same way we've been sampling, but definitely we've been innovating as well. So we've been sampling, but our presentation of it is very different. It's a patchwork of being Filipino and American and anything else we've been influenced by. But yes, I don't really have anything else to add to the group.
Other questions?
Hi, my name is Sam. I'm a recent graduate of Berkeley. I'm also from Arnel High School. My question, anyone can answer, but it's kind of following up on Bamboo's point about the push tourism in the Philippines and in Hawaii. Like, I was there in the Philippines last summer, and I was just very, just like struggling to navigate through the fact that like I was seeing this big ass billboard of Samuelty more than I was even seeing the sky in the Philippines. And I think there are like a lot of artists in this room, and I think my question to everyone here is, how can we as artists, whether it's through music or movement, as dancers, use our art to stay true to our culture and communities and histories that are like struggling to be heard, while like navigating through this like capitalistic society? And it reminded me of Candy's point earlier of that we need to save, in order to save hip hop, we have to save ourselves from the capitalistic structure. So yeah.
Wait, can I make a quick point? Oh, sorry.
To answer your question, I'd say coming up from a generation where growing with a lot of Filipinos, but also had to breaking out and experiencing hip hop when I first came to the West Coast and stuff. Most of the time I had to deal with duality in terms of like, okay, you went to the black African American Latino scene, and they look at you as you're Chinese. And then the flip side, excuse the pun, is that growing up within Filipinos, Filipino American culture is we're known. It was almost like a fight in itself because our own people didn't support each other at the time. I don't even know about now. It's probably different now, but during that time, I had my own people saying like, "What are you trying to do? You're trying to be a flitter, you know?" So the thing is that knowing that where our parents came from, and not knowing until I got older and stuff, the Filipino culture is a very beautiful culture, but it's because the way I guess our parents were raised, it was very, very quote unquote tribal divided per se, because you know you have Visayan, Tagalog, Ilocanos, and they have like little stereotypes, and that our parents coming from the Philippines brought it up, and it's ingrained to us. So as you get successful, you get other Filipinos getting jealous and trying to bring it down, some crab mentality. And then they're looking at it as like, you know, like, why is it that every cultures, like say, Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, why is it that they have one of the most unified communities, where us, Filipinos, we have probably one of the biggest communities in LA at least, you know, the West Coast or in general, but we're the least unified. Whenever someone's being successful, everybody, you know, they don't go out there and support, but you see other communities doing that. Now for me, the only thing I've also noticed is when growing up watching Filipino TV shows from the Philippines, you know, whether it be the GMA Super Show or something like that, we have a lot of very talented people. Someone said sampling and stuff like that. We emulate a lot of American culture, but I've noticed that we've never ever had at the time. We didn't really have our own voice. We were emulating what was hot, whether it be dancing, singing, and all this and that. Now, being that I'm from both, you know, I'm Filipino, but I was born here, so you know, we have best of both worlds. You know, we know what you know, we're not American or white, whatever like that. We know we're Filipinos, but the irony is if you go back home in the Philippines and you don't speak Tagalog or anything like that, they don't consider you a Filipino. The irony too is when you come, you know, you got Filipinos come over here, or any Asians, and you know, you don't know how to simulate, they call you fobs. So again, back to what I'm trying to get at is that I know when I was coming up, I had to figure out. I didn't know exactly. I didn't expect it, but I wanted to do in terms of just hip hop. I know I was Filipino, but didn't really think about it. In some ways, I feel Bam, what he said earlier, is just like, oh, the Philippine stuff kind of corny, because it's like my own people were hating on what I was trying to do. And hip hop wise, it was not about your skin or anything like that. Even though I know it was an African American Latino culture, but at the end of the day, it was just about the music, the dance, the culture. And the only way you're gonna get respect is you had the skills, and you had to really work your ass off on that. Now the irony is that, you know, at least in Southern California, you know, you have the envelopes like Cerritos, Carson, Long Beach, West Covina, Glendale, and stuff like that. Everybody had their own things and stuff, but it's the same thing. It was a bubble. You get to a certain degree, and some of the people that did we had a lot of talented dancers, DJs, whatever, whatnot, but they were comfortable staying back in the thing. And for me, being as a, you know, just a hip hop head per se, I want to get into, like, I want to learn more and venture out and see who's up, you know, who was dope there, you know, like you can get influence from that. I want to see, like, I see all the videos or whatever, hear the songs, but you know, I don't really see that within my own community, and I wanted to go where it really is. So in terms of to get respect, I had to break out of that city and go into the, you know, to LA proper, where all the Latinos and all the African Americans. And during that time, like in the 80s and stuff, and even early 90s, but like they're like 80s and early 90s, it was really rough. I mean, at the same time, there was also gang culture going on, but my friends and I, we were going in there, and they were like looking at us like, who are you? Like that. But when we saw that we had heart, and we really worked our ass off and stuff, and you know, battle and all that stuff, you know, just to give to them, then they gave, you know, gave us respect, they gave us props for you know, like not trying to be who we are, you know, like trying to be this or that. And that was the difference, is that we got, the irony is that I had respect from the African Americans and the Latinos versus from my own people. The only time my own culture respected me or my friends or some of the guys that are doing it is when, quote unquote, you made it, or made some noise, which is the irony of it. It's kind of like the same thing kind of now. Well, I mean, it's a different generation now, and it's cool that we're, just even have this type of form right now, because it's in some ways it's bridging the gap between the older and the younger, and just in general culture itself. So what I always say, just in terms of just using hip hop, people see, when they see, they already know you're different. You just gotta be different. You just gotta be you. You just gotta be like on some, like when they see me, they know I'm not black, and they know I'm not white. They obviously know that I'm Asian. But when they ask me, I say I'm Filipino. But when I tell people, especially again in the music business, it's like, don't say I'm a Filipino artist, I'm a Filipino singer, rapper, or this and that. No, you gotta be like, I'm a dope, blah blah blah, that happens to be Filipino. And here's the craziest thing. Cuba, everybody knows who Cuba is. Now, before Cuba came out, on a national level, the thing is, Filipinos were like the Puerto Ricans of the West Coast. Filipinos, not even Filipinos, it's Asian Americans on the West Coast have been involved in hip hop from the get-go. Except being because our culture-wise, we're not very outspoken. There weren't that many rappers. There were mostly DJs. There were mostly dancers. Mostly rap writers. Very few rappers. And at the time, there were rappers. I remember there was one guy, and it was I can't believe they have friendship names. And it was a rapper. He even had like a kid play flat top, whatever, Filipino dude. But he called himself MC Hollow Hollow. Now, in some ways, cool. You're representing our people, but if you want to get respected in the hip hop community, you can't be coming out as corny, especially back then. You gotta like really, I hate to say it, almost like on some Eminem 8 Miles. You really had to come with it, And during those times, there was very, very few. Even though Asians were very involved in hip hop, but not in the hardcore hip hop. They didn't simulate it. They didn't start really going in until like maybe the 90s. Like during the 80s, no, really, it was rough. Like I remember 1987. I went to the 1987 Def Jam tour at LA Sports Arena, and it was El Cool J, Public Enemy, Eric B. Rakim, Houdini. These are like, of course, old school cats, but at that time, those were people I was listening to. And me and some of my friends were only with very few Asians, let alone Filipinos. And it was mostly like, whether blacks, whites, Latinos, Samoans. We were very few. None of my Asian friends would go to some of the people's studios and want to go to, LA Sports Arena. That's during the time, that's still, that's the hood, even though it's next door to the USC and stuff. And it was more crazier, because, you still got to be careful. You can't wear red or blue, or, you might have sweat by the essays and stuff like that. You never know. But because we love hip hop, we're going to go regardless, So the only thing I can say is to everyone that's whatever you want to do, whether be an artist, engineer, anything like that, or a writer, just be good at what you do and represent yourself. Everybody, and then they'll know that you're different. You don't have to shove it down people's throat. That's the only way. Not, in all honesty, you're gonna more isolate yourself because you say, I'm the first Japanese astronaut, or I'm the first Filipino basketball player in the NBA. Nah, man, you gotta say, I'm a very, that's a talented brother that happens to be Asian. That's all you can do. Your skills speaks for itself. That's it. And the rest, that comes from respect. And after that, it doesn't really matter. And then you use what you have to say, yes, I'm proud to be Filipino, Japanese, Chinese, Latino. It doesn't, just represent yourself and people will notice. That's it. That's the least I could say.
So for all the young folks in the house, if you don't know DJ Redmatic from Cerritos, a pioneer in this game. Let's give it up for DJ Redmatic. Look him up, get his autograph. Okay.
Sam, I just wanted to say say something really quick in terms of what happens when we just say the term Philippines. And again, I want to go back to something I said at the beginning, which is versus this nation-based America versus the Philippines, right? So the Philippines that you're suggesting, the San Milby billboard, that's EDSA. That's somewhere where people can have cars, right? Those are parts of Manila where people have a certain amount of cultural capital, Makati, right? There are other parts where, so that capitalism operates in the Philippines generally. I mean, these are, the spaces that Donovan mentions are places where you're not going to see the big, you know what I mean? Because capitalism in those places bear upon the inhabitants in a very different way than they do in the commercial business districts, right? So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And I think that's what's happening in the video in terms of, the irony of America, of Hawaii, and how it fits within our notion of America, and then within that, Kalihi, and how that fits within our notion of America, right? And those are, again, the layers I think Bam and Gio are trying to, draw our attention to, right, in the video. So, one last question. Who'd like to? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Cheryl. I'm a student from UC Santa Cruz. So I'm a spoken word artist. I like to see my art as an act of resistance, to empower and to educate. I'm also openly queer, Pinoy, and hip hop is like historically. I'm reading off here because I have a long question. Hip hop is historically excluded folks from like marginalized backgrounds. It's misogynistic. It can be very homophobic, and this popular culture has depoliticized like our generation, our current generation. Because of its lack of connection to our historical debts, our economic debts, our moral and socio-political debts. So, like, what advice would you give to artists and to folks who have marginalized identities today in their acts of resistance and solidarity to the movement?
Yeah, hook up with professors like Professor Rod, and he'll guide you along this path. But I think you're already doing it, participating in spaces in which there are other folks committed to the same project, the same goals, who might be doing it differently, who might be thinking about it differently, but you're still in that space where you're exchanging those ideas. The organizing is not happening right here. This is like a break from organizing to talk about organizing, to talk about to go back into our communities and take everything that we exchange and learn from each other here. So I think one of the things you can do is to just be in these spaces and participate in it. But don't be one of those conference heads. You know what I'm saying? Like you just go from conference to conference to conference, but you're not actually out in your community doing shit. You're just a conference head, which is a very specific type of culture. Which I'm not gonna front. I clown it because I found myself in it. I think for a good couple years, and it's what I needed to break out. And again, once again, hip hop saved me from that. I was like, oh, fuck all this, Filipino Student Association stuff. Like we're just meeting every week, we ain't doing shit. To participate in a culture that isn't so involved that it removes you from the community, that it comes from. And I think, like you said, that's what's happened with hip hop. There's a depoliticization. There's a emphasis on making money versus nurturing communities and organizing communities. And if you see that disparity, then choose your side. Pick a side. You see people organizing, using art to organize. And if you believe in that more than you believe in this, find yourself in those spaces. So I would hope something like this acts as a seed in the way that it was for folks like myself to get organized, to seek out other people who may feel the same way as you, and start putting all this theory into action.
Well, I was just gonna say that y'all could probably speak, Cheryl and Arnel, about this better. But there's a chapter in the book by Joseph Ramirez about gay queer men dancers, the dance scene, and the irony behind how for hip hop is very masculine, b-boy scene is very masculine, anti-gay, right? But what's really interesting since the 90s is this, or maybe late 90s, is the way that women and gay men have really led choreographed dance scene, even though, despite the shit talking that b-boys say about it. Like, it's a thriving thing, right? People are making a living. It's probably even, maybe they're equal in terms of how popular they are. So it's happening regardless. Like, gay men and women, right, have been part of this scene of hip hop for a long time, and now it's really exploding. I think it's very vibrant. But yeah, Joseph really has a really good chapter on that in the book, and maybe you all can talk about that.
Yeah, I definitely identify as a gay male, so and that's only been in the recent 5 years because of different oppressions from different cultures, but I'm very community minded as well. So I feel like for you, it's whatever you are trying to accomplish in your mission first, understand what that have a very, very solidified mission and vision for what you're trying to get across and what you're trying to do. Then attract like-minded people who align with your vision from all different genres with different skill sets, who are also community-minded as you, with different approaches too. You have a different approach, a different way of getting across, but it's actually bringing people with different perspectives and different ways to communicate that will make your reach wider. I think for us, it's about creating the most effective change happens when instead of taking an antagonistic approach, we have a very solidified mission, a very solidified message, and we have different ways of getting it across. So if someone identifies with this way of communicating, another person can communicate in a different way that might speak to another person. It's about knowing your audience. There is timing and style to how you present yourself, but if you know your audience, you'll make the impact. If you go in there with a very bubble mentality, you know what I mean, of just thinking like, this is my message, this is what they have to listen, most of the time they won't, because you don't understand your audience, you don't understand who you're speaking to. So you need to also know your audience so that maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody else in your group. I think those are the most effective modes of change, is when you have a clear vision, but you have the fluidity of building an approach that will make an impact where people will listen. And it really is like about actions, you know what I mean? You have as much words, but even when you aren't speaking, it's the doing in the community that screams the loudest. I mean, for us, that's why I'm passionate about Culture Shock LA, because I feel like we're about bridging communities and preserving history and also creating new history and using love and positivity as our vehicle to do that. I think in your own way, whatever your vision is, you know, bring people with you that are aligned with your vision, but think about your audience and how you're going to impact, because if you steamroll, usually it's short-lived. You might hype people up for that moment, but also you might build walls, and then your impact is not even. That's been the demise, I feel, of hip-hop growing up too. It's like, it goes underground, up, Now I feel like it's in that middle where it can go either direction, but it's about preservation, like, of the history and talking about it, but knowing our audience, how are we presenting it? I mean, are we coming out angry and bitter, like we have in the past, where you end up being underground and old school? Or are we thinking about, like, no, this is like art, and this is special, and we all need to mobilize together and then pick our focus. I think right now is a time where like B-Boy summits and all these things that are being created, like every time they ask me for advice or we talk, I say like, what is your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? Because start there first and then bring people together and make that happen, because it's important. But what people do is sometimes they just go crazy and then they steamroll and then it gets diluted and then it gets forgotten. So I think I give you much encouragement, and if there's anything I can do to help, I'm down to give whatever time I have available to help you.
Write a piece about it. You're a
Yeah,
spoken word
spoken
artist.
word, that's
There's
your
so
point.
much you could share through spoken word. I've done some spoken word myself. It's a great way to, participate. But that's the thing. What Jay was saying, participate. Don't just sit back and sort of complain about what's happening and what's not happening. Anyone here can write a spoken word piece. Anybody here can participate. Before I was in Funky Junction, I was in an all-female group called Ladies First. And we named it Ladies First because we were ladies. We were girls that were doing hip hop and dancing when there was not really a lot of girls out there. I think I like how we do it in the dance community. What Arnel was saying, with a lot of the dance here in Southern California and up and down the coast in California, we've reached out to, Don Campbell, these guys that started popping lock in, and embrace them into like, we want to know what the roots are, but we also want to identify who we are and share. So it's about communicating and participating, but not alienating either. Because I think there's a lot of folks too with old school. It's like, well, this is old school hip hop. It's not what's going on now. It's not real hip hop or whatever. The arguments can go on and on and on. We go all day. But I think if we were to just bridge more gaps better, respect what's happening now, because they're influenced by us previously, and see where it goes, and keep participating and keep listening and sharing. That's how we can bring it forward and continue on. But if you're going to sit back and not participate and sort of just complain about how shit is, I don't know. I don't really respect that. What's the point? You can just sit and complain about it all day, or do something about it and participate. So.
We're really excited to see how you use your voice in local lives.
I'm torn between Cotton Candy and Mark Polito. Okay, Candy.
I just want to add that I think it's important to create spaces and do our own parts, but I also after reading, and studying and learning from someone like Audrey Lorde that also states that oftentimes for us as women of color, as queer women of color, we identify as queer women of color even though I'm in a straight marriage relationship as well, but we always fall upon our own selves to do the work. And that's why we also, and I really hate the term allyship, but I also think it is important in terms of those who claim themselves as allies to also do the work and the responsibility and knowing when they're taking up space. And damn well, this music industry takes up space. There's a whole lot of that. So we kind of have to recognize when that's happening. And when we're noticing, and here I am talking about taking space, and I've spoken to other panels, but I'm just saying, it's important that we recognize when we're doing that, and to give space for those who haven't had the opportunity to share and to do and to have those accesses.
So I love this, but I'm 45 and I'm a dad, and when I first fell in love with hip hop, I was in elementary and middle school. So this question is to Gio and to Bamboo and to Cotton Candy and to Kaba Modern and for Red. How would y'all feel about if we did something special for the kids and make it a tour? And if we were to get like Cerritos High School gym rat and pack it with the elementary school kids, because in Cerritos we have 1,000 elementary school kids. At Cerritos High School they teach 3 years at Tagalog. And Garthy's teach 3 years at Tagalog too. So we can get all the high school clubs, the middle school dance crews who are following in the legacy of Funky Junction and Sweet Expectations and Cerritos High Sisters, right? They're your fan base, but they never met y'all. And they're the kids. And if we want to talk about creating spaces, and we're worried about the future of hip hop or the future of our community, I extend that as in my hometown, now that we have access to resources and we have partners in the school district, make it available so you can share your talents. I would be honored if you would accept.
You heard it here first.
I'm serious. That was a question to get a response.
Bam
and
is
I'm hoping for
volunteering or?
Well, I'm kind of volunteering. Obviously yes.
Beautiful. And bring your kids too.
No, you don't want him. He's got a filter mouth. No, but I wanted to say something on top of, you opened your comment with hip hop is very, misogynistic, homophobic. I know that we're all here under the umbrella of hip hop. We have to remember that our society is homophobic. Our society is patriarchal. Our society is, I know we like to say, it's hip hop this, hip hop that, but we're just a reflection of the greater culture. Gangbanging, that's just a subculture reflecting the greater culture. Hip hop, at the end of the day, is just something that reflects the greater culture. This appropriation by corporate America, that's nothing that's in our control. We think it is. We're talking about we're the purest form of hip hop.
they're gonna take it and they're gonna do whatever they want with it. It's not about changing hip hop and making hip hop less homophobic. While we do feel that that's the case because we're more in control of that, we feel like it's more tangible for us. But really, at the end of it, the goal is not just to make hip hop not homophobic, or, you know, move away from being patriarchal. It's getting our society as a whole. Because now what we're having a conversation about is excluding everybody else. You know, it's hip hop, we're gonna make hip hop this. Well, what about in the greater dance community? You know, outside of hip hop, the hip hop dance community, it's still homophobic. I've been to carnival. Yes, sorry.
No, I just want
Were you asking?
I want to add to what you're saying, to add to what I said to her, I'm saying to you. You know you're different. Be who yourself and show it to them. You don't have to ram it down people's throat. Just be who you are, be talented, people respect you for who you are because you're true yourself. That's all you do. I mean, in some ways, Mark's a perfect example coming from, from the culture of hip hop. He's now a mayor of a city, Who would have thought, 45 years ago that someone from my generation, my own color, who I can relate to, is now mayor of a city, and still can talk to the older generation and the younger generation.
And dance.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Mark.
At the end of the day, hip hop made, I'll say this too, that I appreciate my own culture as being Filipino through hip hop because I had to learn that hip hop was more knowledge of self. Once I understand that, then I respect myself. That's what hip hop has brought into me now as a person. Now, and going back to even what Candy says, and Bam says, I am hip hop in terms of I don't have to put on shoes. I live it every day. I eat shit, drink. I mean, that's the way I do. So in terms of now you take away even hip hop. Just saying in general, what you want to do you. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's easier said than done, but the struggle is more worth it if you stick to your guns. Because at the end of the day, it pays off. They'll respect you for being who you are, regardless of what gender, what sex, or what culture. Just be you, straight up. That's it. And that's on life in general. Period. Just represent who you are and do the best you can. And usually, as the saying goes, greatness doesn't come overnight. So you just got to take your time and get there. That's it.
And on that note, I'd like to thank our panelists.
We're gonna have a trans moment right now in that we can't stay in this room